How many of the knives sitting in your kitchen drawer right now did you make worse the last time you tried to clean one up? Not lose, not break, make worse. Because that is the quiet damage nobody talks about. You picked up a rusty old knife, you wanted it bright again, and you took something off that you can never put back. My name is Walt Rennick. I am 71 years old, and I spent 34 years as a tool and die maker in a shop in Ohio before I ever called this a hobby. I learned to clean steel at my grandfather's bench when I was 9. Since I retired, roughly 9,000 blades have crossed this bench. I do not sell knives. People send me the knife their father carried, and I send it back to them alive. Today I am going to give you 8 things in order that take an old rusty knife and make it look right again without destroying the one thing that made it worth keeping. Here is the part that will bother you. The rust is not your enemy. The sandpaper is. The rust, in most cases, is the easiest problem on that blade to solve. The damage almost always comes from the fix, not the ferrous oxide. You have all seen the videos, the silent ones. A ruined blade goes into a jar, some hands move fast, and 40 seconds later the thing shines like a car bumper and there is not one word of explanation anywhere in it. What those videos never show you is the cost. Half of those bright, beautiful restorations quietly destroyed the piece. They sanded the maker's stamp clean off the tang, which is the part of the blade that disappears into the handle and carries every bit of the knife's identity. They took a wire wheel to a fine edge and cooked the temper out of it. They mirror polished a factory satin finish that was never supposed to shine. They pulled original bone handles and glued on colored resin. Pretty in silence, value gone forever. I am not going to name a channel, and I am not going to name a man. I am going after the method, because the method is what is loose in the world. I earned the right to say that the hard way. For my first 11 years at this, I used a bench grinder on carbon steel. I soaked blades in vinegar overnight because somebody told me to. I ran a wire cup brush on a hand drill straight down a cutting edge. I wiped them down with whatever motor oil was open on the shelf. I thought bright meant restored. I think about the knives I ruined in those years more than the ones I have saved since. My grandfather told me something when I was a boy that I have repeated for 40 years. He said, "You can always take more steel off tomorrow. You can never put it back." That one sentence is the whole channel. So here is what I want from you, not an opinion, a knife. If you inherited a blade and you have been afraid to touch it, tell me down in the comments what it is, and if you can read it, exactly what is stamped on the tang. Marker, pattern, number, any little letters. I read those, and I am going to tell you right now that the 8th thing on this list is the cheapest of all of them. Costs almost nothing. Takes about a minute. And it has saved more blades than every acid and every abrasive I am about to hand you combined. I will get to it. Stay with me. We start easy and cheap. The first thing is not a chemical and it is not a tool. It is a clean bench and a hard look. Before you touch anything you diagnose, you wipe the blade with a dry rag and you get it under a lamp close, the kind of light you would use to read fine print. You are answering one question: is this red rust or black patina? Red rust is iron oxide, hydrated, and it is porous and active, which means it is still eating the steel under it right now. Put your thumbnail on it and it comes away orange. Black patina is magnetite. It is stable, it clings tight, and it actually protects the steel beneath it. It does not rub off on your thumb. Those are not the same thing, and you never treat them the same way. The whole goal of a good restoration is usually to turn the red into black, not to sand down to bare, shiny metal. That costs you nothing to understand, and it changes every decision that follows. The man who skips this step is the man who sands a $100 collector knife down to a 50-cent shine. And while that lamp is on, run your eye down the spine and look for pitting, which is a little crater where the rust has already eaten a pocket into the steel. You cannot polish a pit out. You can only decide to live with it, and knowing that now saves you an hour of grinding a blade thinner than it should ever be. The second thing is identifying the steel before you pick a method, because carbon and stainless do not behave the same and you cannot unmix them once you have started. Carbon steels take patina and rust and respond to acid, that is your 1095, your 1084, your 01, your W2, your 52100, and the chrome vanadium that Case stamped on their older blades. Stainless resists both. That is your 440C, your 420HC, your 154 cm, your VG10, and the true sharp stainless that Case moved to later. Here is the tell that costs you nothing. A Case Kexis from before 1965 was still carbon steel back when they were still stamping carbon instead of the stainless that came later. After that, more and more of it went stainless. If you do not know which you have, a tiny drop of vinegar on a hidden spot near the bolster, which is the metal collar between the blade and the handle, will darken carbon steel in a minute and do almost nothing to stainless. That 1 minute test tells you whether acid is your friend or a waste of an afternoon, and it matters more than pride. Soak a stainless blade in acid, expecting the carbon steel result, and you will sit there for 2 hours watching nothing happen, then turn up the strength and start etching a cloudy gray haze into steel that was fine to begin with. Let me stop here for a second. What I just walked you through, reading rust from patina and steel from steel before you lift a single tool, is one page out of chapter 4 of a book I wrote called The Restorer'S Bench. There are 11 more chapters. It runs 158 pages, 12 chapters, and the whole thing is organized by the decision you are standing in front of, not by some list of tools. It comes with the bench cards you can keep beside you, a safety card, and an index by symptom, so you look up what the knife is doing and it tells you where to turn. The point of it is simple. The knife in your drawer tonight, cleaned up right, and you knowing exactly what it is and exactly where to stop. The link is in the description and the QR code is on the screen. This is the night you stop being afraid of that drawer. The third thing is the safest chemistry there is, and it is the one the $40 gels do not want simple. Citric acid. The powder you buy in the canning aisle for under $1, you mix a couple of tablespoons into a quart of warm water, warm enough to dissolve, about the temperature of a cup of coffee you can still hold. You lay the blade in and you walk away for 30 minutes. Not overnight. The citric acid bonds to the iron in the rust and lifts it off the steel without going after the healthy metal the way stronger acids do. That is the whole difference between citric acid and the vinegar I used to leave in overnight. Vinegar is acetic acid at 5%, and once it finishes the rust, it keeps right on going and starts pitting the good steel. Citric acid works slower and gentler and gives you a window where it has done its job and not yet started harming anything. You pull it, you scrub with a gray kitchen pad, which is the non-scratching side of a dish scrubber. You rinse under hot water, and you dry it completely because a wet carbon blade will flash a fresh coat of orange rust in the time it takes you to answer the phone. 90 cents of powder does the exact work of a $22 branded rust gel. Nobody is going to run an advertisement telling you that because there is no money in a $2 answer. That is the only reason you have not heard it. And if you want to go one step gentler still for a real collector piece, there is electrolysis, which reduces the rust with a low electrical current instead of dissolving any metal at all. Sodium carbonate in water, a battery charger on its lowest setting, and a chunk of mild steel as the anode. Never stainless for the anode, because stainless in that bath gives off hexavalent chromium, which is poison. That is a chapter of its own, but know it exists, because it is the one method that takes off rust and no base metal whatsoever. The fourth thing is the one where most men do the real damage, so we go slow. Abrasion. If, after the acid, you still have pitting or stubborn spots, you do not reach for the grinder and you do not reach for the 80 grit. You start high and you go by hand, backed by something flat, a block of wood or a hard rubber sanding pad so your paper stays level and does not dish out a low spot. You begin around 600 grit, which under your thumb feels like fine cardstock, and you only drop coarser if you truly must. You sand in one direction, along the length of the blade, not across it and not in circles, because straight strokes are the only way to a finish that looks like it belonged there instead of one that looks scoured. When you step up through the grits, 600 to 800 to 1,000 to 1,200, which feels like a business card under your thumb, you turn the blade and sand crosswise to the last grit each time so you can see when the deeper scratches are gone. Here is the rule that saves blades. You keep it cool. any color that blooms on the edge while you work. A straw yellow around 400 degrees, a blue around 600, means you have just cooked the temper out of that spot and it is gone for good. Tempering is the low-temperature bake after hardening that trades a little hardness for the toughness that keeps an edge from chipping, and heat undoes it in the wrong direction. Hand sanding never gets there. A wire wheel on a bench grinder gets there in about 2 seconds. I ran a bench grinder on carbon steel for 11 years and I can still name blades I blued without even knowing what the color meant. The cost of getting this one wrong is not measured in dollars. It is a knife that will not hold an edge for the rest of its life. The fifth thing is the edge, and the edge is where the afterlife of the knife actually lives. You do not need a $12 a blade sharpening service for this. You need a stone and an afternoon. You set a consistent angle, roughly the width of 2 stacked nickels under the spine on a normal kitchen knife, and you hold it there because the single biggest mistake is rocking your wrist and rounding the edge over into a dull curve. You work one side until you feel a burr, which is a tiny wire of steel that folds over the far edge and tells you that side is done. You feel for it by dragging your thumb gently off the edge, never along it. Then you do the other side, the same count of strokes, the same angle. Then you take that burr off with light alternating strokes, easing off the pressure as you go, and you finish on a leather strop or even the back of an old belt to polish the very apex. Start coarse if the edge is truly gone, around 400 grit on the stone, then move to a finer stone to refine it. Everything a sharpening counter does to your knife, you just did at your own bench and now you own it. That service charges $12 a blade for something you genuinely learn in one sitting. The shop is not cheating you, they just have no reason on earth to teach you to stop needing them. I'll be straight with you. What fits in a 20-minute video is a sample. It is the first inch of the blade. What is written down is the whole thing. The book runs 12 chapters, everyone built around a decision you actually face, printed in large type because I am 71 and I know who is reading this, and the whole approach is built around a bench you can put together for under $40 with no machinery in it at all. And here is what makes it different from a stack of internet videos. Every single technique carries a line I call "Check Me" with a published dated source next to it so you never have to take my word alone. The National Park Service Conserve O-Gram series, the Canadian Conservation Institute notes, the ASM Metals handbooks. It also carries a 60-day guarantee, so if it does not earn its place on your bench, you are covered, plain as that. If you have been watching this thinking about a knife that outlived the man who carried it, that is exactly who I wrote it for. The link sits under this video, and the code on your screen takes you straight there. Bring the knife back. That is the whole idea. The sixth thing is the handle, and this is where good intentions crack real material. Bone, stag, and antler do not get wet, and they do not get hot. Water swells them, heat dries them, and either one cracks them, and a cracked scale on an old knife is a wound. You clean them with mineral oil and a soft cloth, nothing more. Work the oil in, let it sit, wipe the excess, and you will see a dried out old stag handle come back to a deep warm color that no amount of scrubbing would ever give you. Wood the same, oil, not water. And if a wood scale is loose, you fix that with a thin bead of glue under it, not by soaking the whole handle. And there is one handle material that is quietly dangerous. Celluloid, common on knives made before 1950, breaks down as it ages and gives off nitrous vapor that rusts the very blade it sits on and every other blade in the drawer beside it. It is the real answer to most of the mystery rust in old collections, the rust that shows up on a knife that was cleaned and oiled and put away, right? If you have a colorful old handle, the kind that looks like tortoiseshell or candy stripe, and it is giving off a faint, sharp chemical smell like camphor or vinegar, that is your culprit, and that knife needs to be stored alone, away from the others before it takes the whole drawer down with it. The seventh thing is the finish and the protection, done in the right order so you do not chase your own tail. Once the steel is clean, you are choosing whether to force a patina back on carbon steel to protect it or simply to seal it. A wipe of hot vinegar or even yellow mustard, dabbed on and left for an hour, will build a controlled gray-black patina that stable magnetite again, and that layer defends the steel far better than bare metal ever will. Some men lay on mustard in dots or stripes and get a mottled finish that hides old pitting better than a flat gray does, and that is not cheating, that is just working with what the blade gives you. Then you seal everything with a thin film of mineral oil on a kitchen blade, because mineral oil is food safe and will not turn rancid the way a cooking oil does, or a light gun oil on a folder that will not touch food, and this is where you fight the mirror. If that knife left the factory with a satin finish, a soft brushed gray, you do not polish it to a chrome shine. A mirror on a satin blade tells every knowledgeable eye that the piece has been worked over, and it drops the value the same way a repaint drops the value on an old truck. Bright is not the goal. Correct is the goal. The finish you want is the finish the factory put on it, brought back, not replaced. Which brings me to the 8th thing, the one I promised you at the top. It is the cheapest thing on this entire list, and it is nothing more than where and how you put the knife down when you are finished. Storage. A restored blade goes back into a leather sheath and it will rust straight through because leather is tanned with acids and it holds moisture against steel like a wet compress. The knife you spent an afternoon saving will come out in 6 months, wearing a fresh orange bloom in the exact shape of the sheath. That single mistake has ruined more knives than every acid I have ever handled. So the last thing cost you almost nothing. You keep the knife out of its sheath for long storage, you keep it away from the celluloid, you give it a wipe of oil, and you lay it somewhere dry with a little air around it, not sealed in an airtight bag where any trapped moisture has nowhere to go. A silica packet in the drawer, the kind that comes free in a pill bottle or a new pair of shoes, does more for that blade over 10 years than any polish ever will, because it pulls the moisture out of the air before the air can pull it onto your steel. My wife saves them for me in a jar by the coffee pot. That is the whole secret to the last one. The knife you saved today is only saved if you put it down right tonight. So tell me one thing before you go. If there is a tool I left off this list, a step you swear by, put it down in the comments and I will read it. Next time I am going to take on the one everybody asks me about and everybody is scared of, taking a snapped-off blade tip and reprofiling the whole edge back to a working knife without a grinder anywhere near it. Remember what those silent videos never say. The chrome bumper shine, the $150 kit that holds $10 of powder, the wire wheel screaming down a temper line. Pretty and dead. The rust was never the thing that killed your knife. The fix was, diagnose before you touch it, free. Identify the steel, 1 drop of vinegar. Citric acid, 90 cents. Sand by hand and keep it cool, a few dollars of paper. Sharpen it yourself instead of paying $12 a blade. Oil the handle, never water. Force a patina and seal it pennies. And put it down right, a free packet of silica. Under $5 start to finish. And what you saved is not the $5. What you saved is the one thing you could never buy back. Bright is easy. Anybody can make steel shine. Keeping the knife the man actually carried, that takes knowing where to stop.